Hey, welcome. This will be the best session you will see at Vantage. That's me setting expectations for you. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Ken Jostling. I'm a managing consultant, and as of yesterday, officially, I am now part of Telstra Purple. And I'd like to talk to you today about what I call the modern evolutionary workplace. But what does that mean? Before I begin, I'd like to introduce you to somebody. This is my son, Leon. Leon has autism spectrum disorder, which means he perceives information a little differently to the way you and I might perceive information. He's largely nonverbal. It's difficult to communicate with him using conventional means. So I think to myself, how can technology help him to work more effectively? And casting my mind back about, 2 years ago, I'm a bit of an avid gamer, so I took my son to a gaming convention in Sydney, and I saw this virtual reality device. And my mind went back to my sister about 15 years ago, stuck in one of these things, like screaming, looking from left to right in some simulation. And I thought to myself, what would it mean for my son to be fully immersed in a simulation like that? So I decided to let him have a go. And as he was sat there, as he was sort of strapped in, I had this premonition of thinking to myself, this is going to be the education setting in about 10 years. And I had this view of battery hens sort of arrayed, or kids with devices plugged in, all sort of learning. And I thought to myself, is that really a future that I want? But the reality is that technology is being used to enhance the learning experience for students today, but not in the way that I'd originally thought. So as Leon was fully immersed in this experience, I was thinking to myself, it's probably better for him because this experience is removing the distraction from around him. It's removing the noise, and it's giving him a better opportunity to be able to focus on experience something. And it's essentially information that's coming his way. So what is the evolutionary workplace? Now, if I cast my mind back about 5 years, I look at essentially the focal point of a lot of strategies out there, and that has really been the journey to the cloud. So over the past 5 years, and this is true with the customers I work with, it's really about that journey to the cloud. But what's motivating that journey? And what do we see as a result of the kind of technology we work with today as part of that journey? So where are we now? Well, I think on the one hand, what we're seeing is the nature of information essentially changing. And that means that there's a lot more of it, and it's structured in different ways. And so naturally, we need modern systems to be able to traverse that information and make sense of it, right? Secondly, the expectations of people coming into your workplace now. And often people say, this is about the experience for young people coming out of the education system. And I don't agree with that. I think this applies to everybody, young or old. I think the experiences, people want to experience technology that helps them to do their job better. And they look on the one hand at what's available in the commercial market, in the home market, and they see what they have in terms of their devices at home, and they ask themselves, why don't I have that same experience in my workplace? What are the inhibitors preventing that kind of experience from being available to me in my day-to-day work life? So your strategy, your aspiration to become the modern workplace, in my view, is an ongoing process. It's evolutionary, it's iterative, because it's a moving target. You don't say to yourself, you wake up in the morning, I'm there, we have the modern workplace, because by that time, the modern workplace is now something new. It's the next target. It's the next iteration. So to me, a modern evolutionary workplace is a workplace that can adapt quickly, that can innovate iteratively, that has not just the technology at its fingertips, but the people and the culture to make that work. So I ask, what is it that people are looking for? And I cast my mind back to a dilemma that Telstra has internally right now, which is around its social network. Should we have one big social network for everybody? Should we have a fragmented social network? And if we do, how can information be interchanged between those networks? And I asked my colleague, I said, what is it that gets you up, or what is it makes you sit up at 9 o'clock at night before you go to bed? And as long, in addition to Facebook and LinkedIn, you're actually checking your corporate social network and you're interacting with your colleagues. And the one word he said to me was community, which I think is really, really powerful. And it goes, if you don't have that mindset, if you don't have that culture within your organization, then the technology it's going to be at odds with the people who use it. But let me explain in a little bit more detail about what I mean. If I look at, and by the way, this diagram here cost thousands of dollars to make, so please appreciate it. Very complicated. But it demonstrates a very simple point. For me, whenever I advise on strategy and I go and work with organizations, the first step is you define a set of principles. And what you do, essentially, you test against those principles. One of those principles, in my view, and I think it's a powerful one, and it's probably where you start, is around looking at the balance of empowerment and accountability within your organization. And what I see when I go into organizations is that balance is swung very, very much in favor of internal IT departments. Now, I know many of you out there will represent internal IT departments, but trust me, I think you'll agree with me when you say there's probably better things for you to do rather than give this person access to this document or create a collaborative workspace for this person here. And so the focus of your IT department should be on executing the next step of your strategy, instead of essentially babysitting the workforce, a workforce that could easily, with the technology we have today, be empowered to serve themselves. And so, to me, the balance should essentially shift from internal IT teams back to business users. So principle one, let's empower our workforce. And with that empowerment comes accountability. I think that's very important. Where do we start? Well, there's you and your device. Now, what is the closest I can get to you if I need to communicate or collaborate? Short of me, talking at you on the stage, right? It's your device. So I'm fighting engineers all the time. We need a new collaborative experience. Oh, let's go and build a web app here in this. No, let's build a web part and plug it in here. No. If you need to get information to somebody, this is the closest that you can get to them. And I say to people, what's the easiest way for me to consume news? Well, it depends if you're an Android user or an Apple user, but for me, I swipe left. Any Tinder users out here? No? You're very, I think some people are fibbing. Anyway, but yes, it's as simple as swiping left. And so I say to people, another principle, get the information as close to the person as you possibly can. And if that means augmenting the experience on the device, then that's the way, that's the aspiration, that's the target. So what do you do day to day? Well, you're working with information and you're working with people. And I think it's true of everybody in this room that your day-to-day job involves examining, processing information, or talking to or engaging with people. Unless you're a lumberjack in rural Alaska or something like that, but I doubt we've got anyone in the audience like that today. And so, what sits between you and your device and the people and information that you need to consume? Well, there are two ways of looking at this. One is, let's look at the way we collaborate, or our collaboration ecosystem. What are the patterns that we're seeing today with collaboration ecosystems? Well, traditionally, in my view, they're static, they're monolithic, and they're hierarchical. What's a good example of one of those? Corporate intranet. Think about your corporate intranet. It's probably represented as a hierarchy of sites in a content management system. It's probably pretty stale. You probably have a 3 to 5 day SLA to affect any kind of change in there, unless you're one of the fair few that have free reign over it. So what we're seeing is systems like that are evolving. We're moving to a more flattened ecosystem. Now, you can take software like Microsoft Teams or Slack or social networks, and by their very nature, think about it, by design, they are not hierarchical. But what they do is they provide an opportunity for bi-directional, meaningful exchange of information. And so again, you have to accept, and these are parts of the products that you yourself may be introducing into your organization today. but they're changing from being, strict, holistic, where the information is one way. You simply consume it, but you don't provide any feedback, to systems that are flat and loose, distributed. I said to somebody the other day, the notion that you're engaging on a single social network, it's nonsensical. It's the reality. So the question is, how can I get the information from all of these disparate sources to me effectively? Let's look at the strategy around how we manage information. A lot of you may already be on this journey. So the first step, and I think for a lot of people, this is the motivator to their journey into the cloud. But the first step is get a hold on your data. Where is it? Who's got access to it? If I go into your organization today and I ask somebody who's got access to this, could the business user, the owner of that information, answer that question? Or would they simply defer to somebody in IT because they're accountable now for that information? So step one, get a hold of your data. Where is it? How valuable is it? Who's got access to it? Step two, bring it together, aggregate it. This is part of the strategy of moving to the cloud. Some of you may be undertaking data warehousing projects or business intelligence projects, but you bring the data together so that then you can establish relationships between sources that were previously disparate. Once you've got your data together, you can then leverage the power of modern technology to collectively analyze that information. And when we analyze that information, we draw insight from it. A good example of that, which some of you may be using, is Office 365. So the graph technology that underpins the workloads in Office 365, it's collecting information about who you're engaging with, the content that you're looking at, and it's using that information to give you insight into who to collaborate with next, or here's a document that might be of interest to you. And you can build additional applications on top of that that further harness that data. It's there, you can use it. Once you've got the analysis and you've got the insight, the final step of the process, and to me this is the prestige in the whole thing, infuse or integrate that into the experiences that your users have, or the applications or the devices that they use day to day. So we introduced this concept of a hub. Now, what I would say at the very least is, look to understand what the hub applications are in your organization. A hub application is the application I spend most of my time in every day. Now, I can tell you it's not going to be a HoloLens, but it may well be my email client. If I'm an Office 365 user, it might be Microsoft Teams. So bring experiences into those products. Do not create new experience, because that generates a culture of what we call context switching, which, if you work with many partners or many organizations, is quite painful. I guess there's a few nodding heads in the audience. I guess people are experiencing that now. So look to minimize that. And what you'll see is, over the course of doing that, is points. So a point solution essentially is an application or a workload that serves a singular purpose. Now, it might be an abstract purpose. So you might buy a product, in which case you might force your business requirements to conform with whatever it is that product does. So you're making a compromise straight away. Alternatively, it could be a bespoke solution that isn't scalable, that does one thing, and over time you realize it has to do more than one thing. So essentially we move from what we call point solutions to platforms. And a platform by its very nature is scalable. When I go and talk about modern technology, there are three things that I guess I get back in terms of where organizations are at. One is, what is the initial upfront cost to me being able to introduce this capability into my organization? That's it. What's the cost? And can the vendor or the partner offset that in any way? Number two is, can it scale? I have a chatbot. I want to make more chatbots. Can I do that cost effectively? Can I do it quickly? And the third is, can we do it? Can you as a business do it? And what you're finding now is the vendors are responding to that. So I think a few weeks ago, Microsoft announced the AI platform, which is not yet in Australia, but it's coming. And it's a direct response to those concerns that these solutions initially could be quite cost prohibitive. So you need something that allows you to make more or scale or extend. And again, it goes back to my idea that requires an investment in technology, but it also requires an investment in people and culture. So let's stick with the theme of information and people. So with information, we talk about technology and frameworks. With people, we talk about principles and practices. And this is where you get your bingo card out and see if you've been to any other talks where they sort of talk about some of these capabilities. So on the technical side, the foundations are things that we should have been investing in already for the past sort of 5-10 years. So we talk about microservice architecture. That's taking an enterprise solution like your CRM or your content management system and layering over the top of it a series of services that other applications can consume. So think about the key enterprise systems within your organization. They will have APIs, especially if they are cloud services. Harness those APIs, provide an orchestration layer across those services, which allows other applications to send and receive information. And it is only then that you can bring that information effectively to the device or to the hub application that your users are using day in, day out. Serverless technology, it's not really serverless, but you don't care about that. Serverless technology is really the capability to allow scalable, elastic underpinning services. So essentially, you only pay what you use. And then on the back of that, infrastructure as code is the ability to deploy that non-existent infrastructure in a descriptive way, in the same way that some of your development teams might be rapidly developing software and delivering software into your organization. Machine learning and data analytics, in my view, that is probably one of the most powerful capabilities that you as an organization can leverage today. And chances are, if you're running Office 365 or you're running a cloud service provider like Amazon or Microsoft, then this technology is available to you and it's cost effective and you can make use of it today. And I say to organizations, people have Windows 10. They have an Apple device with Cortana. You've got all the building blocks, all the ingredients that out there today for people to be able to enjoy those kinds of solutions. But an investment in technology is only going to get you so far if your organization has not adapted to be able to leverage it effectively. So you need to invest in principles and practices. And for me, that starts with, or if you're going to start anywhere, you start with the design thinking process. And that can involve things like human-centered design. Now, all human-centered design it's a prescriptive process involving collaboration and workshops, but it looks at the impact on the person, the individual. And as a result of that, you end up with human-centric systems. Now, if you don't take that approach, there's a risk that the systems that you develop actually diminish the skills or impede the skills or whether the skills of the people that are involved with them, as opposed to a human-centric system which is designed to augment and enhance the skills of the people that use that system. And you'll see a good example of that with the video we'll show you later on in the session. But once you have that design thinking ability, you can then adopt a more agile approach to delivery. Now, it's a principle and a practice, so I'm not really talking about Scrum Masters, although that's an aspect of it, but design agility, delivery agility is really the stance around how do we manage scope? How can we take a project or an initiative and deliver it in an iterative, time-boxed fashion? How can we incorporate into the delivery process the need or the absolute essential requirement to solicit feedback and act on it? How many systems have been sort of thrown over the fence only for people to go, this isn't what we wanted, or we've got a better way of doing it. Have we got any leverage to incorporate that? No, sorry, there's no budget left. So think about how you deliver these experiences. And when we talk about minimum viable product, allow for that feedback process in terms of what you're doing. It's a principle. And then from that, you have this concept of development operations, which is really the marrying together of your delivery or development capability and your runtime business as usual operations capability. It's not a technical initiative. It's a transformation to your business and the people and the culture. And that's achieved through a marrying together of those roles, enhanced by automation, which is something that the technology can provide. And then you end up with things like continuous integration, which is the automation of, a developer, for example, checking in a change, straight through to that change being made available for people to actually use and provide feedback on. This is very exciting. I'd like to talk about a solution that Telstra Purple delivered for the University of Queensland. But rather than me trying to explain what that solution is, we've prepared a short video which showcases essentially what affluent is. If you'd like to roll the VT.
Education is about engaging in the first instance, and then from that engagement follows good education, good learning.
So the solution is using the HoloLens augmented reality technology to bring data together so that students can visualise real-life situations.
Telstra enabled us to put the app together. We produced the science, and they took that science and translated it into HoloLens speak, basically. The HoloLens and this app have engaged students right from the start. So we have a fish that swims around, and the fish can die. And one of the things you see is students saying, no, we can't, the fish is dying, do something about the fish. They become emotionally engaged in it.
It is rather fun actually. You get quite attached to your fish. When you are wearing the HoloLens unit, you can pull up sort of lab results and they're able to be seen by your team on the screen. And then you can change a couple of parameters, maybe up your irrigation or change the sunlight to make the fish happy. It pulls all the concepts from your lecture together into a sort of fun environment.
So instead of just looking at a spreadsheet, they know what's happening in real life, environmental ponds, rivers, etc., fish kills. They play the app, they see what's happening scientifically, and they can do things to it to manage it in time, and then they go back to a spreadsheet and see the reality of the data that's created. Blended learning, for me, is probably the way to go in the future. It allows us to visualise lots of relatively boring data in really interesting ways.
I'd like to welcome to the stage Steve Lee, who was the lead developer on Affluent Effluent, and Kim Bryson, Professor of Agro-Business Technology at the University of Queensland. How you doing?
How you doing?
How do you do? Oh, so exciting. Right, so Kim, how did this solution come about? Talk me through the inception.
Well, it was about three things that came together, really. It was UQ, ITS Group, was looking to investigate new technologies that we would be using in the education sector over the next 5 to 10 years. I was fiddling around with an Internet of Things application that we'd put onto our 1,200 hectare rural Gatton campus. Some of that you saw there on the video. And I was getting lots and lots of data, but in a very boring way, just a series of figures. I wanted to make that more engaging for students. And thirdly, we have a real problem in agriculture in terms of getting young people involved. The average age of most production sector agriculture is around about 60. Food is the basics of human survival, okay? So we need to get young people in, we need to get them engaged in what's going on. And agriculture is actually not manual, not non-academic, and it has some very good salaries that come with it. Yet it's still very difficult to get kids involved because they think it's all of those three things. So I wanted to engage the students, and technology seemed to be a way to go.
Okay. So how did the collaboration process work? What was it like to go in there and go through the design process with the University of Queensland?
Yeah, so after we've sort of decided that a holographic application would be the way to go with this, we came and started the project, and then we basically had a lot of back and forth with Kim and with the students in order to decide like what is the best way to get the kids to learn. And we came up with features that we had to be scrapped because they didn't fit the solution very well, and we introduced completely new technology. So rather than just the HoloLens, also a companion web application that the students could then take what they'd learned in the holographic setting into their tutorials, and they could analyze the data and link it back to the original models as well.
So from the business's perspective, did it require any significant adjustments to collaborate in that way through that design process?
I'm an academic, right? A scientist, but an academic. I tend to think like this. Can we do that? Oh, what about that? Oh, that's very interesting. Can we do it? Steve is an IT professional with a much more structured way of doing things. I had to come in a bit. He had to come out a bit so that we met in the middle. And it was a process over a few weeks. I'd never done this standard, this daily review thing, certainly never done the sprint review type thing. And it was like, holy dooly, I do not work like that. But I got used to it. I recognised the importance of that sort of approach in getting a product done at the end of a budget timeline. And I think that was a very successful process in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It was a case where we both had to sort of take feedback from each other and then evolve our processes to deliver the project successfully.
So there were changes on both fronts, really, in terms of getting that partnership to really work.
Absolutely. And I think this was then underpinned by both the company and both companies. So the UQ as a business, infrastructure people were very supportive of me doing what I wanted to do. Telstra, Purple were very supportive of what Steve was wanting to do with us, and that partnership worked very well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the audience will be thinking about things like, cost and scalability. Tell me, so the plumbing that underpins all of this, and obviously there were a few HoloLenses that need to be procured, but to what extent is this solution scalable from a technical perspective?
Yeah. So one aspect of the scalability is trying to get only a few HoloLenses in the classroom, but being able to teach the entire classroom at once. So we had to think about how we could engage the groups together, and we did that by scaling out, by exposing the data in more ways for the students to analyze. So we could scale to the whole classroom size by doing that, but also the underlying architecture that we use to do the simulations, to do some visuals, and to get that data in a downloadable format. We've already used that on another project called Croptimum, which is around simulating sorghum and wheat growth.
So there's other projects in flight that essentially reuse this plumbing?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So Kim, what are your visions for the application of this technology in a more wider context? Where do you see it playing further roles within the education sector?
Well, the design thinking process was really quite important in this, actually, going back to your previous slide, because I could see that as an expensive tool, I wasn't going to get traction in the university unless I could make it usable across a number of different areas. So a number of different courses. So we use Affluent Effluent in chemistry classes, we use it in ecology classes, we use it in stats classes, we use it in precision agriculture classes, and we're now developing up Croptimum based on a CSIRO and UQ and Queensland Department of Ag and Fisheries model that's been in the environment for nearly 20 years. We're going to be using that with a lot of agronomy classes. So it has to have a multi-purpose use in the university system to be feasible to be used long-term in the system. The other good thing about this was the design is so robust. We used science from all around the world to put the original systems dynamic model together that Steve then translated into HoloLens Speak. That we can keep on using it year in and year out. I mean, we get different students in first, second, and third year, of course, or coming in new in first year. We can use it year in and year out. So not only is it scalable across different courses, it's actually able to exist longer term.
And this technology, thank you both for your time, that's fantastic, but this technology is actually here. And if you fancy having a play and playing around with your own virtual fishes, then please go out there and it's available for you to try and test it out here at the exhibition. So I think what I learned from that sort of exchange was the importance of collaboration in the process. And you can see here an example of that process. And look, the collaboration process can be messy, right? But you can see if you can read the fine print there that it's goal-centric. It's people-centric. It's looking at the impact on individuals. Who's affected? What are we trying to achieve here? It's outcomes-driven. So for me, if I'm concluding about what makes things work, I think the importance of a healthy partner ecosystem is crucial. And what you have to marry together is business expertise, which will not come from your partner. That comes from within your own organization. But you have to marry that together with experience delivering in the commercial market and subject matter expertise, technical acumen. But for me personally, whilst the technology can inspire and often generate new requirements and to demonstrate to people the art of the possible, really what we have to focus on is what is the business outcome. When was the last time, if you do these things, when was the last time you signed a statement of work that committed to a business outcome? So collaboration is centric. Establish those principles and test what you're doing against them. Adopt an agile mindset. See the technology in action and use that to inspire you. What I want to see more than anything else is when my son comes of age and when he joins the workforce, I want him to be able to work with technology in a culture that can accommodate him so that he can work on his terms. And if he does that, he's going to be so much more capable than I ever could be. And I leave you with this quote: "Do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret." Does anybody know who said that? Steve Jobs? Bill Gates? Elon Musk? Miss USA 2016. But it really does resonate with me. If you're one short of a consensus, ask that one, are you willing to try? Because change requires a group of people and a willingness to try. Thank you very much for your time.